Hey everybody, welcome back to the Astronaut Glass Torch Shop. I'm out here to make another marble. I'm going to make a fairly simple construction, but try and play around with the internal structure, geometry, try and make a little interest in what's going on inside. So let's fire up the torch and start off by making a color stringer for one of the outside backside of the marble colors. This was opaque aqua. Real easy to work with color. So a lot of people kind of struggle with just making stringers, but keep at it. It becomes easier. So I like to just, getting it started is kind of the awkward part, but once it gets going, then I'm just kind of focused on keeping a diameter. So I need a good background from where I'm looking at that stringer size pulling out. I need to be able to see it against some sort of a clean background, dark or white or whatever. And I'm just wavering back and forth on the rod to, don't have to spin it all the way around, but trying to get some heat moving around on the rod. Can we let this set up for a moment? So yeah, making different stringers with a little thicker, a little thinner, for different applications. It's nice to try and get at least the concept of a fairly precise size stringer that you're after for a certain application. So this is going to be basically kind of some gold and silver fuming on the inside walls of this marble, and then I'm going to try and do, like I say, some shaping and see what we can create instead of just the simple Vortex cone, which is very classic and very pretty. I want some undulations in there. There's a lot of different ways to do that. I'm going to explore a couple things today. So the one thing that makes this a little challenging is the ultimate size of the marble will be influenced by where you start with, because there's going to be some kind of different additions of clear glass on the back that will have a tendency of getting this thing to grow a lot bigger. So the initial cone on the clear rod will be relatively smaller than they might do sometimes. But I still like to get the initial gather on the rod to start sort of incorporating the front lens, which is going to obviously build up to a much larger diameter than this 19mm rod. So I need to get kind of a round gather and then form a cone off the end. And I do have a little piece of some twisted cane, ribbon sort of cane with just, pretty sure it's just gold and silver fuming on here. And I'll add a little bit of that since I have it. And but again, all these effects will be basically on the interior wall, not the actual center core of the marble. So I hope everybody's doing well. We're experiencing some beautiful weather here. Seems like endless mowing at this time of year, trying to keep everything under control, but it's great to see things growing. Some people are already cutting hay, which is early this year. Usually most of the local guys don't really think of cutting hay till after July 4th. But like most places probably across the country, experiencing some bit of gyrations and extremes in the weather. It's supposed to get 85 here today, which is kind of toasty for June. So I've got a bit of a gather going. Let this settle down a moment and then focus on that initial kind of cone shape. We're just kind of coming in here at a 45 and working that edge, circumference edge, and then drawing this pointed end out. So I am kind of attempting to drag it, the glass a little bit. With graphite, there was not much drag action happening, but okay. So I am going to kind of shortcut because I didn't show making this cane. Maybe I did in another video, but pretty basic little ribbon with some fume in there, and I'm just going to put some of this in here. Just because. I'll melt that in a little. A number of these steps I may pull out the end to just kind of clean up that internal termination. Now, the first step here, I guess the second step maybe, I'm going to try and do some gold fume on the tip, silver fume back a little ways. Be our first fume layer. We're going to do like 3 different fume layers. Let's see if we can start with kind of a localized fuming. So just start on the very end, and it's going to wash up the sides a little. It's getting a little too warm there. You need to keep the base glass from getting too hot, or it starts just cooking out the fuming, especially with the gold. Okay, then we're going to move to some silver. Bump this flame to a little bit more reducing flame. Do just a little touch of silver. And we will kind of cook that . Okay, now I pulled out some clear, fairly thin, and that's going to be the main ingredient for this fume effect in several layers. So I'm going to stripe, basically straight stripes from the tip to the circumference. Space these out a little bit. And then the next pass, we start a little lower down, kind of follow along the first line. And we're going to come along with shorter, start even a little farther back and do little short stripes. So we have it kind of filled in, not filled in tight, but and again, we're going to kind of aim to cook out some of the excess fuming between the lines. And then again, we'll sort of drag this. We'll try and twist that glass a little bit. When we switch to the L marver, we want to keep that same rotation. Okay, now second layer. Back to gold. This time I'm trying to get a wider spread of gold across. Okay. And we're going to come back with our thinner, clear rod and do basically that same pattern. Start out here on the very end and come straight. Probably can flip these shades up. It's a little easier to see working with the clear without such dark lenses. Some of these we may actually do different number of stripes. If it looks too wide to just have one, try and add two. To try and be fairly evenly covered by rows of the clear trapping the fume. And again, melt these in, try and burn out some of that excess fume, and give it a little twist. So if you do this kind of in a succession where you get it all the way heated through, come in with the marver when it's pretty soupy hot, and use a little bit of pressure and keep kind of dragging it. You get just a little bit of spin going on. And then once again we'll sharpen our tip, pull out just a little bit. Don't need very much to pull out, just keep that end from being a kind of a dead spot. And the last layer, guess what? It's going to be silver fume. Silver is kind of tricky to get a good amount, but not too much. Heat it up till it's glowing pretty good. It bakes that silver in. What do we got today? We got hecklefish today. From the Y-Files. And hecklefish is always talking about lizard people. Some kind of aliens. Alright, got our fume. Got another layer of clear to put down. The Y-Files are very interesting. AJ breaks down all kinds of wild stories, and it's great production. So again, trying to put these lines down straight against a backdrop of lines that are slightly twisted. This generates kind of a little bit of a crosshatch. So I tend to rotate all the way around because when you do this in successive passes, you can get that surface a little too hot. So I usually like to just make one layer or application of the clear and then move away from that. Way when you come back around to putting on some adjoining glass, that's the substrate surface isn't too hot. That's okay. We're getting there. So that is the fume effect layers. We had our ribbon cane for the heck of it. 3 layers of gold fume, silver, just gold, just silver. This builds up a depth of different colors and reflections and all kinds of things happening. At this point, it doesn't really need to twist at all. That final layer could be straight. Just trying to kind of clean up the flat sides. And again, I'm going to pull out the tip a little. Alright, now some frit. With the frit, we're going to do, what do we pick out? Some lapis blue. Bring that angled face kind of square to the torch. Get it good and hot, and give it a roll. In the frit. So if you have the frit on there and it heats up and it's got little pokies that are sticking up, if you go back in the frit, those little hot points sticking up will tend to collect more frit because they're the hottest. And you wind up kind of building up larger, chunky effects in the, so it's not just all fine little particles, it'll be kind of clumpy. If that's what you want, that's what you get. And I don't like to marver at this point until that's pretty well settled in and spread out. And then we can hit a little bit. Okay, try and keep this kind of on center. Gonna put that frit away, and we're gonna switch to black. And the black frit, I could at this point use dark cobalt or black stringer to fill out the back, but I think this time I'm just going to use some frit. And this I am trying to get a pretty full coverage. So one thing we'll do is do this in steps. Heat up just one area. Pick up the frit. Heat up the next little spot. Just to get a little bit more concentrated. And this layer is kind of the backdrop. So then, when these little dots stick up glowing hot, we'll just kind of directly hit those, spread those out. So then it's just kind of a matter of how dense do we need this to be. Have to get a solid background. It's not going to be absolutely opaque. Like little spots with some light leaking through. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. A little bit of an open lacy effect. Now, I am kind of heating this up a bit extra because this next step is going to be kind of important. What I'm trying to do to shape things. So I'm going to give impressions. kind of should have clocked these a little better. Okay, I may forget about one of those. We're going to ignore one of those. Too many dents there. So what happens now? We are going to put clear just in those hollowed out spots. Now if you selectively add clear in a situation like this and melt it in, it will make effects on the geometry of the underlying surface. So this, I just kind of helped it along, putting in those grooves, fill those in with clear. I'm actually going to kind of build this up. Alright, so we got 4 awkwardly placed sections there. Now this is what I was talking about, where this marble can start growing. Because now we want to get back to a central cone, but we've added several layers of glass now. Before we start building out the rounded back side, we want to have this shaped version at this stage in a flat cone. So we're going to melt these in, and you're going to have this high-low effect on the surface, which hopefully translates to the interior. You're going to see these waves around the interior. So one of the key things to this, even if it has to go all the way to a round shape, we want to just let that glass do its own leveling out. That will get the most dimension. Now you could go back and repeat. You could go back and either add another stripe of clear on top of these stripes, or even go to making the impression, push it in. I've done other things in the past where I've done like knife edge impressions on the inside. So I thought I'd try this. I'm not sure if I've really done anything quite like this. Let's see. Just kind of gently bring this together. Excuse me. Alright, then we're going to pull this end out again. Heal up that tip. And we'll run with this. So we're going to build up the back side now. But just before we do that, maybe we'll hit it with some fume. So I often do that for the heck of it. So that first wrap, we'll leave that end open. I'll close off that very tip. So the other day, just a couple days ago, Ray was out here in the shop doing her thing, and I was out in the garden trying to get some tomatoes planted out, and she came out and hollered at me. She said it blew a circuit breaker. Well, long and short was that the controller running her kiln had suffered a failure when I went to try and sort out what was plugged in where and resetting the breaker, plugging it in somewhere else. It's like the minute it hit power, a big old flash came out of the back of this little control box that I made. Like, yeah, there's your problem. That's not working. So fortunately the kiln is fine, and fortunately we have 3 kilns in here, each one with its own separate controller that I put together. So I went about swapping out a controller, and she's using the biggest, in some sense, biggest kiln we have with a lot of mass to it. Anyway, it was holding its temperature pretty well. She'd been working for a while, so it was pretty soaked with heat. And swapped out the controller. That was simple enough, but then I had to reprogram the controller because she's running soft glass, and that controller came off of a kiln. The last time it was run, it was batch annealing boro glass from I think back to the county fair. And so since I have several controllers, and I've had several in the past, I have a bunch of notes written down for all these different controllers, but sometimes it's a little hard to figure out from my notes which is what, and I was a little confused whether that controller was running Fahrenheit or centigrade. I didn't want to program in the wrong numbers, and I couldn't come up with information right away to set or verify whether it was set to Fahrenheit or Celsius. We have one controller, the one I'm using right now, that only runs Celsius. Most controllers I've had, there's somewhere to select. So it took a little while to assure myself that it was all working properly, and then it was up to its idle temperature, and I thought, well, I should let it sit there for a while and make sure things soak, get back to a stable temperature. And fortunately, I was sort of just fiddling around with some other stuff, and I realized the temperature was climbing again. I was like, oh no, you're supposed to be sitting at this temperature. Well, it had last been used, like I say, to batch anneal glass, so it wasn't set. It was only set to idle for 5 minutes or something before advancing to the annealing temperature. So that facilitated some urgent, quick programming to get the numbers plugged in, and then I had to just kind of keep an eye on it for the rest of its cycle that afternoon, make sure it was behaving properly, and it did. So then the old controller, open it up, and it's pretty obvious it's the solid state relay that burned out. So not a big deal. Jump up on eBay, find one on there that can be sent to my door for a whopping $7 or $8 or something. Get that in another couple days and plug that in. Be back in business. My original Paragon controller I had was a standalone controller that I used on this kiln. Actually, this is the first kiln that I ever had, still running. And that Paragon controller, it used just old-fashioned relays, and I replaced those, or that relay, I think twice, and then it was acting up again, and it's like, you need to switch over to solid state relays. So that's our little excitement in the torch shop from the other day. A little hot swap of controllers. But I think we need to reposition. That controller was actually sitting pretty close to the kiln, and when I took it out of there, it was pretty hot, so it needs to be relocated where it's not picking up so much heat from the kiln. But in many ways, it was kind of fortunate that it happened while she was out here in the torch shop. There's some failure modes that are a lot worse. So thankfully this was a pretty simple, just short it out, trip the breaker, shuts things down. And at least it won't proceed to melt down the kiln. And then just last night, I was out with the telescope. It's a beautiful evening. I just went with a globular cluster this time. What do they call it? Gumball globular cluster. Because I had my telescope, had a little bit of a slip and fall, wasn't bad, but I wanted to try and kind of realign the finder scope, the tracking scope, and the main scope, and check the focus on things. And considering it's a Newtonian telescope, this one has been rock solid with combination, and it a lot of people really fiddle with running a combination adjustment every time they set up their telescope. I haven't messed with this one for literally years. But perhaps I should have done it last night. But we'll see. I think scrutinize the image that came out. It looked good this morning when I took a quick look at the stacked image. So that's a fresh image. I will probably get that processed a little bit and put that at the end of this video. At this time of year, it's not so cold outside at the telescope at night, but the nights are so much shorter. You wait till midnight basically before it gets dark. And probably by 3:30 or something in the morning, it's already starting to get light again. Okay, so just kind of building up the mass of glass here at the back. This is another step that can influence the final size of your marble. That might be obvious, but you can do a little short on this step, or you can pile it up, make a bigger marble. But, of course, whether you run this stage a little on the shy side or pile it on, it will change the interior look and feel of the marble. Two things shape the marble experience on Vortex marbles is the back fill in here at this step and the front lens. How much of a, if the front lens is half the marble or a third of the marble, that makes a big difference. Sometimes hear people asking, what it's supposed to be. It's like, well, you're the artist. What do you like? Then your job is to educate the customers that you made the right choice and this is the way it ought to be. So this undulating effect, I may have not gotten quite extreme enough with it, but we'll see how much effect this has. You can see that front end it's kind of funky. So it's important to melt that glass and let it come together and then kind of pull out that end. So we're really going to kind of hang this down, get that clear glass at the tip to pull out that end. And then we can go back the other direction, kind of tip it back the other way while we kind of start building the front lens up a little. Okay. We're looking pretty good. To get this to stop drooping. Alright, on the back color we've got that aqua blue glass green. I don't often put green on the back. It's a little finicky, and some double amber purple. So that's what we're going to go with. Alright, see if this green will behave. It's got kind of a lot of bubbles and stuff going on. There's a reason why I don't usually like to use this glass. Some of these canes, a lot of the canes, they're just kind of crap, full of gas. And some canes, you know, from the manufacturer, some rods seem to run pretty clean. So it's just one of those things. I knew a glass artist years ago that every time I got this green, or well, whatever green he was using at the time, he would go through it and check the rods, and a whole lot of it he would just let it discard. It just wasn't usable. So some of these bubbles kind of appear and pop on their own. I can try and mechanically chase them down with the pick. Which, when you have a crazy number of them, that's kind of not very effective. Hot, hot, hot. Alright, well, some of these bubbles, I hope they work out on their own. Chasing bubbles is not my favorite thing to spend my time with. Alright, well, let's cook it in a little, see where we're at. I won't try and chase down all this amber purple, but usually one train of thought anyway is to remove all that haze Right now I've got it burned out on the end. So sometimes I'll try and go down each one of these lines and go after that. This takes some crazy heat. It's kind of tricky because to get that amber purple to really defuzz, it's got to really sit there in the heat, and that's kind of hard to do at this, get it closer to the junction. But the majority of that green glass settled down. Just have to leave some of that amber purple alone. Okay. Chill time. I hate to drink all of Hecklefish's water. You won't have any water left to swim in. Okay, let's rake it up. Okay, not doing too bad. Off center here. Oh, that's a little toasty. So sometimes you do these punties and you have to sort of focus on you're holding your punty connection that you're holding onto versus the other side that may be way out of center. And try and heat up the place you want to bring back into alignment. Yeah, when I went into the marble mold there, it was pretty hot and it got a little funky. So we're going to horse it back in shape. Okay, well, got a big old chunk of glass now. Okay, pull off the edge here. We don't want to pull out angel hair. Pull glass out, you want to try and cut it off in the flame pretty short, so you don't have big, huge, long threads running around your bench. Well, now the main goal is to get it into a nice round shape. Introduce lots of heat into this face. Try and heat up that core. Get everything starting to move. And it's kind of going back and forth between letting it hang and elongate, and then go back the other direction and let it fall back on itself. Push that glass back and forth a little. I think this marble's a little bit larger than I usually do. Which I kind of indicated at the beginning, some of those steps of trying to change shape. Make the core larger, everything builds off of that, so the end result is proportionally larger. At least for me. If you got a way to keep it all consistent, good on you. That's why I like marbles. They don't have to be consistent. In fact, it's kind of nice to have some variety. Okay, I kind of left that end alone. I'll just kind of let it melt together. bring it all the way up and around to the end. Yeah, I think the net effect, we just got some kind of rolling, gentle waves, which is pretty cool. Now that last step, I was kind of pushing into the mold a bit, got that kind of that apple shape where the putty end is kind of pushed in a little bit. And because this marble is so big, the front lens is proportionally a little smaller than I typically get. A little closer to half and half. This is definitely not that. Okay, so we basically have the back, not all the colored part, but the back half is formed up to the correct shape and size. So we hit that with a little flame polish and switch sides. Now again, this gets to be where a little bit of patience. If you rush through this at this point, I've got the flame polish done, so I don't want to do any tooling on that backside. But if I rush through transferring and moving on, that back end is pretty hot. It's still moving, so give it a little time to set up. That puntty, the touchdown spot was off. It was kind of on the center of the pattern, but it was off the center of the marble. So then sometimes you get a little hook in the end of your puntty trying to get the alignment. So the rod is in alignment, even if the spot is not on center. If that makes any sense. Get a little heat to the back side to let that puntty relax, and then try and get it on center. So that first trip into the marble mold, I left the surface of the glass pretty hot so we could move around. Most people would say, you know, before you enter the mold, you should let it skin over, but I'm going to hook it to the back end, set down, bring it up to the front. kind of play with that hot zone where you get it moving without introducing too many more funky ripples in the glass. And now if I go back in the mold, I will let it set up a little bit more. Looking at the reflections, things are starting to look pretty good. So now when you want the shape to stay put, you let it run in the marble mold for a little while and get it to really soak off some of that heat. And you want to feel that nice smooth rolling like a big ball bearing in there. Get that surface nice and hot. That should just about do it. Hopefully that amber purple will retain some nice colors. I think that green behaved pretty well. So I think we have success. Yeah, a lot of these little changes making the interior a little more interesting. Doesn't have to be a real sophisticated approach. And read those reflections. Not always simple. There we go, folks. We got another cool marble to put in the kiln. Kiln's up to temp. Hopefully it keeps working. So a lot of times I sign things with a Be Well, and I kind of picked that up from a fellow YouTuber, Mike, who does Creative Sauce. Does a lot of audio production information on how to use the programs and different instruments and so on. And he told some heartfelt stories about his struggles with mental issues through his life. And Be Well to him is like Hope your mind is well. Not just your body, your soul, but good mental health. And that's part of my message I always put out. Try and put out some good energy to people. So be well, and we will see you next time.